All right, so welcome to today's Apache Administration and Security class. Today we want to talk about SSL because it is really one of the core technologies on the internet today, and as an administrator of a web server, if you will not be compiling from source, if you will not be setting up proxies, you are going to have to install an SSL certificate sooner or later. Okay, so it's good for us to understand how those work and how we can create them, how we can install them. Before we get into that, well, let me ask you a question. Why are we using SSL on the internet? Okay, more secure. So what do you mean by that? What does it mean to be more secure?
Telnet was what they used before, transmitted everything in clear text.
Okay, so clear text is dangerous because you get a man-in-the-middle problem, right? So when I send clear text, especially passwords, although other information is also important, like your social security number, you're doing taxes, that's going to go over. So clear text information can be caught by someone in the middle. Usually because the internet is not just a single wire that connects you and the server, right? The internet is made out of many computers and routers and connections where when packets leave my computer, they don't know how they're going to get to the destination. They get routed and directed as they go forward. So that means there is quite a bit of possibility and opportunity for someone to preview that traffic. Okay, but the easiest way to be man in the middle is not by hooking yourself to a backbone of the internet, where millions of people are talking all at the same time. The easy way to do that is to connect to a network that uses hubs instead of switches, because when you use hubs, which most likely at home you're using those, libraries and small schools would do that. Basically, when you send any keystroke through the internet, it gets communicated to all the workstations that are around you. You plug into a hub, it's a repeater that basically will copy your information to all the workstations. Now the workstations are smart enough to only pick the information that relates to them. But once you run a sniffing software like Wireshark, you're running the software, and then, see, at that point, you can see everybody's traffic, and you could sift through it. You could look at it and put it together. Okay, so hubbed networks are where a lot of passwords get lost, and when you are on a local network that is not using switch technology, your passwords are possibly being copied. Okay, so man in the middle is one reason why we're using SSL. What would be another reason to use SSL on the internet today?
Does it replace cookies at all? Or?
No, SSL does not replace cookies. It does work with cookies differently. A lot of times when you have an SSL connection enabled, your cookies will not be saved to the drive. Okay, they will be only in-memory cookies. And it sort of makes sense because if you are in PayPal or on eBay, you don't want any trace of this session. And so that's why with SSL a lot of times the browser is going to treat cookies differently. But it still needs cookies. It needs to know who you are as far as the browser itself. Encryption, yeah. So encryption, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to have a certain level of confidence that our data is not going to be captured or copied. So this would increase the confidence of the server-side people and the customers that the internet is a good marketplace. Is that important to us? Well, if we send the opposite message, right? Zappos.com gets hacked, and banks get hacked. That teaches people, right, that the internet is not a safe place to be. which means that they don't want to take classes over the internet. They don't want to pay their bills, and suddenly, you know, the entire technology market goes down. So the confidence level that SSL brings about is very important to us. There was a commercial some time ago on TV about mail, like UPS, United Postal Service mail, and it would go to say that the refrigerator has never been hacked, you know, and corkboard never got hacked. Basically, you know, obviously encouraging people to do business via regular mail instead of the internet, because many people still feel that if they use credit cards over the internet, something wrong is going to happen. You see, SSL itself is not going to do the job, because you can have encrypted connection, and how can the credit card number be still stolen, even if SSL is enabled? Exactly. So let's say on the other side it gets decrypted and then gets stolen from them, because companies often will keep your credit card number so that they can do recurring transactions, or that they can refill, you know, pre-fill your you're shopping late at night and you're too tired to get up to actually get the credit card. They can, you know, fill in the blanks for you. But there is yet another piece, and the reason why we use SSL. Okay. By the way, let me just say too that even with SSL, if you have a virus on your computer, right, as you are typing the credit card number into an encrypted connection, those keystrokes can be caught by a virus, and so you still lose your credit card. So there's a lot to security, not just secure connections. But today we want to talk about where the web servers get involved, and that's the connection with the browser. So the second reason why we use SSL, the first one is security, encryption, you know, levels of confidence, so that the technology is the right place for a marketplace. The second one is identity, okay, identification. Look what happens if I navigate to a well-known website. So let's go to maybe eBay. Okay, and let's go to the sign-in page. Okay, what do you see in the browser that is different, you know, than other websites that you navigate to? Excellent. So right here it says HTTPS, and in most literature about security, you are asked to look for HTTPS. Okay. Now, even though it says HTTPS up there, if you have a virus that modifies your host file, there's a host file on Windows under C, Windows, drivers, etc. And if that file was modified, then the IP address you're typing in after HTTPS is wrong. Okay, therefore, the that alone may not be enough to make sure that that is the host you're going to. But HTTPS is very important. What else is different? All right, let me show you eBay. Okay, now you're at the optometrist, okay? A and B.
The area by the Fay Line.
There you go. So, see this right here? This is called, well, it's part of this is the extended identification verification, okay? It's a new feature of SSL certificates. One way for VeriSign and companies like that to make a little bit more money, okay? But the idea is that the browsers are built today in such a way as to make it very obvious that you are not on a regular website, you are now on an encrypted connection. We used to look for this little lock in the right corner, right? But if you look at this one, it's so easy to miss it. And so the new browsers, both IE and the other browsers, are putting out a big green sign. Also, if the SSL security certificate is not valid, it used to be just a little warning that said, hey, the certificate doesn't look right. Now, let me see if we can go to Let's go to the same eBay website, but this time we're going to generate that certificate message. So let's do this. Sign in eBay. What we got here? We have Mark. We have HTTPS. Okay, and look at my browser. The browser no longer just issues a small problem message. It says this connection is untrusted. You've asked Firefox to do this, but we can't confirm that your connection is secure. A simple solution: get me out of here. Chrome actually has red messages there. I mean, you really know you did something wrong. Now, how many clicks does it take to get out of here and actually go to eBay on this website? I mean, yeah, exactly. Over time, they added more and more clicks. Now you have to say, okay, I understand the risks. Please add exception. Oh, yes, get certificate and confirm security exception, and now you get in, right? And so, obviously, this is not going to work as expected the way I typed it in. But the idea is that the browsers today are taking the SSL connectivity very seriously, and they have special modules built in just to warn you or to sort of give you a warm and fuzzy feeling about that everything's okay.
Also, last summer, at least one CA got hacked. It was giving out, well, allowing bad guys to publish their own CAs.
Okay, yeah. So Stephen mentions CAs. Anybody knows what that stands for? CA? Certificate Authority, right. So Certificate Authority is a small group of businesses that have been blessed with the authority to give out certificates, and they are linked to the browser companies. Because how could the browser know that this website is kosher, right? Well, there's a way. They know that the website is fine because the web browser was compiled with instructions on who the blessed companies are. And there are fairly few certificate authority companies. Now, those businesses can sublet their business to other companies. Then you need an intermediate certificate, right? So there might be a chain of certificates. Let's see if I can do a quick search on certificate authority, just so we can preview some of the companies involved here. Let's see. Providers. All right, so there are a few companies here. Thought was a big company. Now they're bought by VeriSign. Basically, there are relatively few companies, and what you pay for with a certificate, okay, is not the encryption. The encryption is simply a mathematical system based on RSA or DSA algorithms that anybody can do, and in a few minutes you'll do a lab where you will create your own certificate and you'll have fine encryption. Okay. By the way, we used to do encryption with 128 bit, with actually 64 before that, and even less before that. Now the last certificate that I ordered was 2048 bit, right? And 2048 bits, imagine a binary number with zeros and ones, and so basically you have a number made out of 2048 zeros and ones. So that's a fairly large number, and the idea is that with a number that big, it starts to be very difficult to start guessing numbers that are that big, right? And in a moment we'll talk about how SSL is based on RSA, which is based on prime numbers, and how it is impossible to basically calculate prime numbers. You have to know them. And if you have a large pool of prime numbers, then you can pick prime numbers that are very difficult to guess. You multiply them together and you come up with with a result that then can be used as a public key. And then the issuer of the public key has a private key that has the two prime numbers that make up the combination. All right? And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So basically, the browser is compiled in such a way that it is going to first verify the certificate authority. Then the certificate authority says, okay, GRCC, we give you a certificate that we signed with our certificate, and now whenever the browser attaches to your certificate, they're going to know that it's okay. There used to be a process back in, I think around 2000, I was ordering a certificate from VeriSign, and they had us fax on our letterhead basically information about the company before they would issue the certificate. If you wanted the very powerful certificate of 1024 at the time, they would have to come on site and like visit your company. Because again, VeriSign isn't just selling encryption, they're selling the identity. So due diligence shows, go and check that the people that are going to use the certificate exist. Today, all it takes for them to verify you is you swipe your card, right? And the certificate comes out on the other end. I would say that the identity checking or the due diligence to make sure who you are is not as robust as it used to be. But basically, we have then the companies that are allowed to sign certificates. So in the lab today, you will generate a certificate. Okay, and you will have a certificate that you could send to VeriSign or to Thought to be signed. And so let's look at some of the prices that we're looking at for this service. And after that certificate is signed, then they will send you a public key, see, that you can then use. There are two keys. There's a private key and a public key. Okay? When you generate a certificate request, you do that with your private key. You keep that key private, you never send it to anyone. You take the certificate request, send it to VeriSign, they send you a signed public key. In our lab, we will have a server key, our private key, and then we'll generate our own public key. Okay, so that's the difference. But let's see, let's go to SSL certificates. And if we were just going to buy an SSL certificate, EV is that extended validation, okay? And extended validation, basically, I'll show you the difference momentarily. But let's look at just Secure Site Pro, which is the generic certificate. So a 1 year is about $1,000. All right, you want to have SSL on your website, we can do that for you. All we need is your credit card number and $1,000. Now, other companies may not be as expensive as VeriSign. Okay, it's sort of free market there. You can go with a company that I'm working with, which is GlobalSign. There are really only two competitors on the market. Okay, there's the GlobalSign and VeriSign. VeriSign owns a lot of different companies there. And if you look at SSL, let's see, the main SSL, which is the basic one. Let's see, buy now, North America. Okay, so here a year is about $249. Okay, but it depends on what level of encryption you expect. And then, of course, there's that extended verification. So you're connected to, which is run by, you see that second part here is extended validation. I'll show you what the GRCC certificate looks like. So here's the GRCC certificate, and view certificate details. All right, so it says that the certificate has been verified, okay, and this is the organization it was issued by, right? But it doesn't say it was verified by, let's see, this does not light up because, okay, here's a trick that browsers do as well. You see the red spot here in the lower right hand corner next to the, right down here next to the clock on my lock, and it says there's a warning contains unauthenticated content. If your web page has images or JavaScript or CSS files coming from HTTP locations, so you hard-coded a absolute path even to your own web server, okay, the browser will not lit up like it did with eBay, because now you're pulling in parts of the web page that are not encrypted. So to make this right, here's what I could do. I could probably, let me go to a different web page over HTTPS. Okay, see how suddenly this lock is now without the red spot? Because everything on this page is coming from an SSL location. And so here we have just a regular basic certificate. It says you're connected to, so the identity piece is done. You're connected to, which is run by, okay, the extended, the EV is not there, extended validation. And it is verified by GlobalSign. No green, sign like it does exist here with eBay. Again, another way for these companies to make some money, because now they can charge for this extended validation. Okay, any questions so far? Anything you want to ask? Yes, please, Tim.
Do you know you need SSL when you're drawing from a large database of private information, or like where is the cutoff between like SSL and whatever other alternative there is that's less complicated?
Okay, so first of all, SSL does not have to be done through the browser only. You mentioned Telnet earlier. So Telnet is used as that black command line that goes to a Unix system. There is something called SSH, which basically takes the Telnet-like service and puts encryption around it, and we call it SSH for Secure Shell. TLS is the actual protocol. So when you add TLS to any connection, you make it secure. So HTTP adds TLS, that's HTTPS, and that's the secure socket layer SSL. So you can use it with other things like direct connection between you and the database, you and a Unix system. Now, the fine line between should I use SSL or should I not, because really on the internet through the browser you only have the two choices. There isn't right now another technology that I'm aware of that gives you sort of middle of the road. So here is what you would have. On one extreme, if you are taking credit cards as a company and you'd like to continue to take credit cards, then the company like Discover, Visa, MasterCard will require that you run SSL. And they will require that you partner with another company that will verify, they'll scan your system to make sure not only SSL is running, but also all the security patches are applied and the website doesn't have some known security issues. So that's one extreme. Where you take credit cards, you have to have SSL. Then, sort of middle of the road, are companies that perhaps do not take credit cards, but they accept username and passwords, right? You're not going to lose money immediately, but if you do not use SSL with username and password, then someone is going to, sooner or later, catch up with that. On the hub network, passwords get lost, or they can be snagged in a different way. If you look at our Blackboard system, we, I'm already logged in. We also use SSL. For a long time, we were using only SSL during the login process, okay? Because that's all we needed to do. And then later on, we had other requirements like the gradebook had to be encrypted and other things like that. So if you have private information you try to secure, good reason to use SSL. And then finally, there is the reputation of the company. All right, so if you have SSL enabled, then it means that you take security seriously. So that's another good reason as to build reputation to use SSL. Most websites, though, are going to have a public interface, just like eBay does. This website gets hit millions and millions of times an hour, probably. Okay, SSL has quite a bit of overhead to create these connections on the server side. We don't care about the client because millions of clients means millions of CPUs that have spare cycles. But we have to, on the server side, make it happen. So these public websites oftentimes will not have SSL on them. Okay, so yes, there's a choice, but whenever there's a password involved, you should use SSL. And if there's information like colleges are under FERPA, which means that we need to keep your information private. So this is a great reason. Healthcare, they have HIPAA, which means that they need to keep some information secret or protected at least.
So what is the alternative to SSL? Is it just cookies without?
No, so there isn't really an alternative. SSL can be done in a few different ways. For example, the way SSL is done most of the time is by the server having secret private key and then a public key. But you could require that all the browsers that attach to eBay also have a valid certificate. So then the browser would have a private and a public, which means that if you don't have a public key that's valid, you cannot log into eBay. That would just kill their whole business model, right? But as a company, you could require that, and there might be good reasons why you're doing that. But I'm not aware of another technology that would allow you encryption. Okay, encryption. There are technologies that allow you to log in and track the login session differently. For example, there's basic authentication that'll track your login and password inside of the header and not with cookies, right? But there isn't another one to allow you to do encryption. Basically, the browsers are such a well-adopted technology that you know, to say, hey, we're going to do it differently, you know, it would just takes a long time. And SSL works okay. By the way, who developed SSL? Anybody knows?
Netscape.
Yeah, Netscape, right. So basically, Netscape provided a whole lot of great technologies. Very, very innovative company. Cookies come from Netscape. JavaScript, all right? Now we're talking about SSL. I mean, they really built, years ago, they built the foundations for the e-commerce as we have that today. All right, so here is the extended validation certificate, and it works because the browser can connect to the certificate authority. Certificate authority signed the eBay's certificate, and the public key got downloaded to our system. So let's talk for a moment about this private key, public key issue. First of all, web browsers are not the only place where private keys and public keys are used. Okay? You can use private and public keys with email. All right? Spam. Spam is bad because you get a lot of email you don't want. The bad part about email is that you can very easily spoof as well. I can send you an email that looks like it came from the president of whatever company you want. Because I generate the email, I create the header, and I say from whoever I want. And in your inbox, it'll look exactly the same. You would have to go in and verify where was it generated, and hopefully you know the IP address of their mail server to really come to grips with that. So PKI is the infrastructure used. All right, PKI, public key infrastructure. It can be used to validate email. Here's how it's done. I have a private key and I have a public key. I will send everyone my public key so that when you receive an email from me, you will be able to verify that with my public key. If someone is spoofing my email, it'll show in your mailbox as an unauthenticated message, something that's not valid. All right? The idea behind a public and a private key encryption is that it allows us to encrypt without both parties knowing the true key to the encryption process. Okay, so let's start at the beginning with encryption. Some of the easiest ways of encrypting is by substituting characters. Okay, long ago, you know, you could send a message via a dove, and as long as everybody knew that when I wrote A, I actually meant B, and when I wrote C, I meant D, you can decrypt it on the other end. So there was some kind of a matrix of characters, and through the substitution, you could decrypt it. So as long as both parties had this decrypting mechanism, everybody was happy. Well, the problem, of course, arose when someone got caught, and this decrypting mechanism got out of, you know, out of hand there, and it became public. That's also the case with most locks. Everybody carries a key, right? So I can open it, and you can open it. Well, that works great until we lose the key and someone gets a hold of it. So here is how certificates are different. Okay, certificates are different because the private key that I keep, it allows me to encrypt and decrypt. I have those prime numbers that allow me to do that with the RSA encryption mechanism. Whereas the public key, okay, the public key allows only the encryption step. Okay, so that way, when I send a message, you can go ahead and send a message back, and I can read that. Okay, so you have the private key and the public key. The private key, it allows encryption and decryption. The public key is going to allow encryption. So in a process of SSL handshake, okay, the keys are going to get exchanged between the browser and the server. And so then this shows us how that happens. The client, the browser, issues a request. Hey, let's go ahead and start SSL connection. So then the certificate, the public certificate, leaves the server and it goes to the browser. Then the client authenticates the certificate against a list of known CAs. The browser has those precompiled and it can verify that. Then the client will generate a random symmetric key, and then it'll encrypt it using the server's public key. So what happens here is a tricky situation because the asymmetric encryption process, which is using this cryptography process, is very expensive in terms of CPU. This whole validation of certificates and using the public key, it's too expensive. So what we're going to do is we're going to exchange certificates, and then we will agree on a password. All right? With a symmetric encryption, we can do it very quickly. So now we both know the password, and so we very quickly can do the two-way encryption. So that's what happens next. We're going to come up with a symmetric key. And then the client and the server now both know the symmetric key, and the session starts. So you could have this go both ways, where the client sends a public key to the server, and the server sends a public key to the client. All right, and then they both could converse based on that. All right. Before we go further, let's take a quick look at a short video about prime numbers, because the RSA algorithm, okay, the RSA algorithm, which is the basics for the public key encryption. Okay, it's based on prime numbers. So here's what it says. A user of RSA creates and then publishes the product of two large prime numbers, along with auxiliary value as the public key. The prime factors must be kept secret. So, prime numbers. My sister-in-law is an elementary school teacher, and she corrected me, 1 is not a prime number. apparently, prime numbers are divisible by themselves and by number 1. And they have to do both, and number 1 is only divisible by number 1. So anyway, so the prime number 3, right? Divisible by 3 and by 1. What's the next prime number? 5, right? Okay, so let's just go easy. And we choose 2 prime numbers, 3 and 5. And that's our private information, private key. So 3 times 5 is 15. For a human being, it's not difficult then to guess that the prime numbers that make up 15 is 3 and 5. Computers can't do that very well because they don't have that type of guessing intuition. So they have to have actually a list of prime numbers to go with, and then they have to try the combination of all of them to come up with that public key issue. So the prime factors must be kept secret. Anyone can use the public key to encrypt the message, but with currently published methods, if the public key is large enough, only someone with knowledge of the prime numbers can feasibly decode the message, right? So if you can guess the prime numbers, and if you think about IT jobs, if you can make your job guessing large prime numbers, okay, you're going to be employed for the rest of your life. But prime numbers can be very large, especially when you have 2048 bits to take up. But if you're interested more in detail of what the math of RSA is, this is a great article. I just wanted to get your attention on the prime numbers. And from here, let's take a look at, what did I do with it? It's prime numbers right here. Let's take a look at this little presentation.
Billions of dollars crisscross the internet.
Yep. 3/6 is going to be plenty. What's that?
Crisscross the internet every day. But all this e-commerce wouldn't be safe without some very special numbers. They're called prime numbers, numbers divisible only by themselves and 1. And they've long fascinated mathematicians like my friend, Simon Pumpener.
Hey, Reuben.
Hey, Simon, what's this?
This is a prime number.
Hang on. This whole thing is one number?
Yep. It's 2 raised to the power of 43,112,609. Just take 1.
Whoa. And we know that this is prime?
Correct. It's been verified by computer to be the largest one known to date.
So hang on a minute. You're saying this one gigantic number is only divisible by itself and 1?
You got it. It's indestructible.
That's amazing. How many pages is it?
4,376.
That's incredible. So why are prime numbers so useful for internet security?
Okay, it works like this. Start with 2 really big primes, call them P1 and P2, and then you multiply them together to get a composite number we'll call C.
Okay, and C is not a prime number.
No, of course not. The point is that while computers are very good at multiplying numbers together, if you start with C and try working back to get P1 and P2, it turns out to be super hard.
Ah, right. So then what?
So, this number C is used to generate what's called a public key, a code that's available for anyone to use.
Hence public key.
Yeah. The bank sends you this public key, which you use to encrypt your credit card or what have you, and then it returns back safe and sound.
So then what?
But P1 and P2 are used to decrypt this code, so they have to be kept secret. They're what's called a private key.
Right, so they're not beamed across the internet.
No. Only your bank or whoever is receiving information knows what P1 and P2 are.
So they're the only ones that can access my credit card. Okay, but what if a thief does intercept my message?
Not a problem. A hacker using a state-of-the-art computer system would need 1,000 years to find the original primes and crack the code. Your bank already knows P1 and P2, so it can do it in a second.
Ah, but isn't there some kind of catalogue of all the known primes that a hacker could use to crack my code?
Well, this is the crazy thing about primes. No one has a complete list. This Goliath is the largest primes found so far, but the number of primes yet to be discovered smaller than this one is a number the same size. Take off a couple of digits.
Right, so then how big is the next biggest prime number going to be?
Nobody knows. It's a mystery.
Ah, well, there you go. It's just another one of those things you just don't know.
All right, so hopefully I get your appetite wet here for a little bit of math. So prime numbers. Any other numbers that you can think of from back from school that are interesting? Some sequences of numbers? Fibonacci numbers. Let's see. There we go. And so here's the guy that came up with a sequence of numbers, these ones right here, that are strong, naturally strong. Basically, if you look at a shell of a snail, it's built based on a Fibonacci sequence of numbers. Let's see if there's a Fibonacci sequence. Let's see if we can get a picture. There it is. See, so 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and then the shell comes up that way. And it's naturally strong. So Fibonacci numbers, but prime numbers is another one set, right? We can't even find them all. And so just think about it. Your security of your credit cards is built on our inability to find prime numbers just fast enough. Okay, I'm sure someone is already working on a machine that's going to undo it soon, and we're going to use something different than SSL. Okay, so we now understand that there are private certificates and public certificates. So this whole idea of the internet is based on creating some kind of protection for data. Think about a box, okay, security box that I would like to pass around the class. I put something very important in the box, and I want only Stephen to know, so I'm going to pass it. And so how do I lock it in such a way that only he can open it? If I have 2 keys, I can give him the key, I can have a key, but somehow I have to transfer the key to him in the first place, right? And then if someone has a key between us, then they can always open the box as well. And the worst part is that Stephen will not know that the box was opened, which is why the whole privacy of data is important. Once you know that your data was stolen, that's great, because you can do something about it, okay? Change your social security number or something silly like that. But if you don't know that it was stolen, that's the worst. So you could put 2 locks on the box, 2 locks. I have a key that opens mine, and he has the key that opens his. All right. Well, that still wouldn't work very well, because you know, he can unlock his key, comes back to me, I can unlock mine, I can open, I can put my message in, I can close it, but for him to lock it again, somehow has to travel back. So let's just say it's a mess. It's a difficult issue. So we come up with this PKI strategy of having the public key that can encrypt, but a private key that can do both, encrypt and decrypt. Okay. So let's see how that works, because again, these public and private keys, we probably will see them more and more to authenticate all kinds of things. By the way, those keys can be used in the 2-factor authentication, right? So passwords is something you know, but the private key is something you have. And so we might see in the future maybe a bank. Right now, the banks go through all kinds of hoops to authenticate you. They'll show you a picture, they'll send you a text message, but it makes sense for them to issue a certificate. And I install that certificate on my browser, and so then they know that the certificate is valid. All right. So let's see here. Let's see. That's fine. Oh yeah, I actually included a little link here to an article about 10 most secure locations on the planet. I talk about digressing. Fort Knox leads the way, but there are other very important places where your data probably visits once in a while. Anyway, interesting read. So let's see how all of this is done inside of Apache. Let me go back to my system, and I'll go ahead and remove everything I've done so far, just in case. So let's remove Apache here. Okay. Okay, so at this point, we are going to configure our Apache server, and we'll say -- enable SSL. So this is going to kick the SSL module on. In the 1.3 version of Apache, you actually had to configure with including OpenSSL libraries. So OpenSSL is a very important OpenSSL is a very important project in open source, and they produce software, okay, software that enables us to include SSL in other open source projects. Okay, OpenSSL, and we will use OpenSSL to generate a certificate. All right, we'll use commands for that. All right, so let's start with that. We'll go ahead and configure our system, and here's another link for some more documentation or of how SSL is going to work. And here's an example of a certificate. It's all encrypted in encoded in base64, right? Base64. But no, it's actually a binary representation there. We do it in base64 so that way the certificates can be emailed, they can be worked with just like text files. All right, so back to our server. I'm going to go inside of my config. I'm going to say make clean. Now some of you have had this problem where you reconfigure but you did not say make clean, which means that parts of the binary were already precompiled, so we have to say make clean if we're going to do something new. Configure prefix equals home Knoppix Apache and enable SSL. Later on, we're going to install OS Commerce, which is a PHP application, and we will add SSL to it, right? So SSL is independent of the technology that you use to actually run your website. You can use PHP for both encrypted or clear text communication. The way your web designers create a website is going to be created the same for non-encrypted and encrypted. Now, I shouldn't say that exactly that way because as you saw with the mixed content error message that the browser issues, if your web designers are not mindful of the fact that everything they use needs to be SSL, then you'll get additional errors and unexpected behavior. But basically a web page that has images, that has links, you don't have to do anything special to that web page to make it encrypted. You just add certificates and enable encryption on the server. It would be nice if SSL certificates were all the same, but they are not. So let's say you are running IIS. Okay, you often cannot use the same certificate that you purchased for Apache or WebLogic server. Having said that, okay, you can oftentimes convert one public certificate to another. That way you can reuse it. Some years ago, I purchased for GRCC a wildcard certificate. Wildcard means that we can use it on all servers that end with grcc.edu. And basically, we created a version of the certificate for Windows, so that way we could reuse the same certificate on all servers. The wildcard certificates are good and bad. They're good because they're easier to maintain, because they all expire at the same time. It's the same file. They're bad because you transport them to multiple servers, therefore more chances of getting them lost. So more chances of basically exposure and vulnerability through that. So so some companies actually view the wildcard certificates as dangerous. So now we'll say make and make install. Oops, I have an error message here. Let's see what I do wrong. OpenSSL headers not found. Okay, so let's see. I may have a typo here. Let's see. Let's try something different. Let's go this, and we'll say with SSL, and we'll provide which OpenSSL. Okay. No. Well, that's interesting.
Another make please at this point?
No, I'm not sure if this is. Let's just go with it. Let me compile and see what happens. Maybe I just didn't notice this message before. Okay. All right. So we're going to compile this. And I lost the track of thought here. Let's see. All right. So give me a moment, please. Let me see how I can fix this.